Well, good morning, everybody. Before we dive into this Erekose video, interesting that video I did yesterday about Hamilton, about the fact that Illinois has introduced a new bill. I think it's 2221, something like that. What is it actually called? 2122, sorry. It's called the Senate Bill 2122 that's going to outlaw lying, bluffing, whatever you want to call it, to juveniles. And it's quite funny because I sent an email to Steve Drizzen asking if I could get in touch with Hamilton and write to him and tell him, what a spineless git he is. But Steve just wrote back, don't write to him. Although he did share with me the fact that, the git bit, it reminded him of, in a song by the Beatles, I'm So Tired, when the Beatles talk about Sir Walter Raleigh, who is alleged to have introduced tobacco to England, but in fact, the Spanish had already done that. So anyway, a bit of a false accusation of Sir Walter Raleigh, who they in the song referred to as a git, stupid git, presumably for bringing tobacco to England. Anyway, when I tweeted it, I got a question from McGilla. Paul, what is a spineless git? so I replied with, let me just tell you what I wrote in the tweet. Yeah, so in my tweet, McGilla, what exactly is a spineless git, Paul? So I replied with, git is a term of insult with origins in English, denoting an unpleasant, silly, incompetent, annoying, senile, elderly, or childish person. And of the five that liked that particular reply, top of the list, Marty Tancliffe. So I was quite chuffed about that one, because of course it was him that shared it with me in the first place via LinkedIn, and of course he is an example of one of the most grotesque acts of lying. To tell Marty that his father has just regained consciousness and has told them that it was Marty that had killed his wife and attempted to kill him. How sick can those police officers be to do that? It, again, just beggars belief at times, doesn't it? The actions of law enforcement. Anyway, get on with what you're meant to be doing, Paul. So it's quite a lengthy video, 35 minutes of the dude. And then I wanted to share something with you about the case, some news on Mr. George Powell. Let's click on that, click on that, click on that. Let's move me out of the way. And let's click play and full screen.
Get on the train before it leaves the station. The truth train is coming, gonna run them down.
All right, hello everybody, how you doing? We're here today talking about Exhibit A on Netflix, new show that I just saw there and was checking it out. I watched the first episode. It's very interesting stuff, goes right in line with many things that I've been talking about here on my channel. So it has, I think, 10 episodes, I believe it was. And the first one had to do with junk science. It's all about junk science. That's why it's called Exhibit A, but it's about junk science and how junk science gets used and that sort of stuff. And so they use real life cases. And the first episode centers around video, junk science with video, with, you know, like surveillance video or whatever, that sort of stuff, and how junk science can end up getting used to convict people. And the case that they use is George Powell. And it's down in Killeen, Texas, right? And just to give you guys a brief idea of what was going on here, I suggest everybody go watch the episode themselves, by the way. But I'm going to show you a crucial part here that's going to show everybody why this case is ridiculous and a sham. But anyway, it starts out, he's just a guy on the street there in Killeen, Texas. He actually stays at a motel. He sells CDs. He's a musician, and he sells CDs like a rapper. Likes to rap and rhyme and do that sort of stuff. And he makes CDs and stuff. And he was real close with all of the armed forces that were in there. They had a base there, I believe, Air Force, Naval, something like that. And so he was real good with all of the, particularly even the veterans and stuff, but also some of the soldiers. And they would buy his CDs and that sort of stuff. And so he was kind of well known in that area, but he had an issue with the police, and he would often, you know, see them on the street and start yelling at them and stuff like that. So he kind of drew some attention to himself, unfortunately. But then one night, or maybe over a couple nights, there was 2 robberies. One was at a 7-Eleven, and one was at another little gas station, right? And there's a lot of things that go on about this that's pretty wild. But when it comes down to it in the end, there's actually 2 things, because when I Googled this afterwards, there's a second reason why this ended up being wonky, but I don't want to give that away till the end, what happened there. But anyway, the 7-Eleven clerk was clearly saying that the person she saw was about 5'5" or 5'6", 5, you know, right, you know, basically somewhere mid-range of the 5-foot area, right? Halfway to 6 foot, right, or whatever. Well, here's the thing, folks. George Powell is 6 feet and like 6'4". Okay, he's like, I mean, a tall guy. He's a pretty big dude, right? Okay, so these witness statements of this man being shorter, right? Got ignored. They went after this George Powell anyway, and most likely the reason why how they talked themselves into this is they probably felt like he was a nuisance, so they probably felt like it wasn't such a bad thing they were doing. But they were ignoring the fact that he didn't fit the description, and they proceeded against him. They convicted him, and he's been in for 12 years now. And he now has this Netflix documentary helping to tell his story. In the Netflix episode, the thing that they center on is this whole height issue. And I'm going to show you something here in a minute that they show in the episode that's going to make it pretty clear to you how that Powell and the actual perpetrator do not match up. So what happens here is they go after him. They go after Powell. They get, you know, convict him and all that stuff. So the way this ends up is Powell gets, I think, well, according to the article, the Innocence Project got involved. So he now has this lawyer helping him. And the lawyer brought in a special, you know, a forensic expert, somebody who actually uses the proper protocols in determining height and stuff. Basically uses the proper strategy and stuff in determining the size of objects in rooms where in a video. They do that by going and measuring the actual room, and they do there's a lot of, like, you know, calculations that go into it and stuff, right? And then they brought out this thing. It's like it sits on a little tripod. It's like a laser detector or whatever. And they have George Powell stand there, and the laser detector does a complete measurement of, you know, George Powell's height, breadth, width, so that it brings up a actual proper representation of him when they overlay it over the video, which I'm going to show you here in a minute. And the fact is that George Powell is not the guy that did this, and it's pretty damn obvious. And folks, he's still not out. Okay, it's crazy. I'll tell you what happened in the article when we come back. But for now, I want you guys to understand that this guy was just an undesirable, a lot like Stephen Avery. He was an undesirable. He didn't have a lot of money, wasn't powerful in the area, didn't have a lot of pull or influence, had a lot of similarities to Avery in that sense, right? And then they used what you're going to see here is basically really super junk science to convict. And they also did some other things, like they bullied the witnesses and the clerks, and the only one that wouldn't have it was the one at 7-Eleven. She stuck to her statement that the perpetrator was 5'5", and that's what helped them to and eventually flesh this evidence out that the perpetrator was actually much shorter than George. So, but they were bullying the clerks and bullying people, and so this is what happens when cops get lazy. And I hope law enforcement officers out there around the country, I hope even DA's offices are starting to get educated. We the people are now starting to pay attention. We are looking at this stuff and we're going over it with a fine-tooth comb, and we are going to eventually, as this movement grows, as more and more people join on to this social reform and criminal justice reform movement, it's going to be harder to deny, because we're all going over this stuff and we're going, look, this is obvious. This could have been corrected before, and it shouldn't. And before it got 10 years down the road, 12 years down the road, 15 years down the road, when the compensation becomes greater, right? It could be corrected sooner, or not happen at all. And I hope law enforcement agencies and all are out there and are paying attention. Don't do things like what happened to Brendan Dassey when you're dealing with a mentally limited juvenile. Don't do it. Okay? Public opinion is coming out squarely against that type of behavior. Okay? Wisconsin may be getting away with it here, maybe trying to get away with it here, but I guarantee you, moving forward, it's only going to get worse. People are only going to start to care more about this issue, about how juveniles are getting treated in our criminal justice system. So trust me, law enforcement out there, don't do things like this. Don't run a shoddy investigation against somebody you've already wrongfully convicted once. Don't do it. Don't do it. Just saying, it's just a little bit of friendly advice from Erekose to law enforcement out there. Because trust me, I'm not anti-law enforcement. I'm really not. I think 98% of law enforcement officers out there just want to do their job well and want to do a good thing and want to serve the community and that sort of stuff. And I love those law enforcement officers. Of course I do. But I think sometimes when it comes down to it, the chain of command, sometimes officers end up just falling in line and doing what is coming down the chain of command, whether they agree with it or not. And I think that sometimes puts them in awkward things, but it's the way but that's also the way they operate, because they have to all protect each other. It's a sticky problem. But look, guys, you're seeing the way that the interrogation of Brendan Dassey has affected the American people, and how very decidedly they are not with it and they don't like it. So don't do it, is my advice. Don't do that. Don't be lazy. Don't despair because you think you'll never find the actual criminal and try to pin it on some kid so that you can at least tell the public, oh, well, we got the guy. Don't do it. I mean, just don't do it. It's in this here again, lazy police work. Obviously, this guy was not as short as the witnesses of this crime were saying. This guy is clearly a tall dude, very tall guy, and you're going to see that here in these clips. So, all right, I'll come back and talk with you some more in a minute. Let me just show you the clip here real quick.
From the other view that he was standing erect as he was entering. That would have been the one to properly use if there was only one image, but we also used others.
Knox was not even aware, evidently, that there were multiple cameras available, and he never went to the scene. And so the night before he testified, he went out to the scene just to say he'd gone to the scene. He already knew how he wanted to come out. I remember the judge at the trial even mentioned that. Well, I'm convinced it's admissible because he did go out to the scene.
Mr. Knox did not follow the methodology, and so this can't possibly be scientific and shouldn't get into court. Now we're into a subjective realm where an expert can do anything.
His entire report is that absolutely nothing I did was right. It's suspicious. If you have a dispute between experts, that goes to court. It's going to be up to a jury or up to a judge to make a decision. Which one do they give weight to? Which expert do they believe?
Sir, would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Well, my name is Michael Knox, and that's Knox. I'm a forensic consultant here in Jacksonville.
And sir,
It's hard to call bullshit on a forensic science when your background is not in that forensic science. The judge doesn't know. If it sounds good to him or her, they're going to let it in. And I think jurors, when in doubt, well, the judge let it in. It must be good science. It must be good testimony. I believe we've established a overwhelming case of actual innocence such that he should be released.
Okay, so this was the forensic, guy that first came into the case, right? And this is what he made, right? Now, the interesting thing is what he said. This is where he said he figured that the person was 6'1" and all that stuff. What I want to show everybody right here is, look at this. Right here, across from right here, right? That's about where the top of this guy is right in between the second here and third 7-Eleven mark. And I'll show you a little closer here in a second what that looks like. And then I'm going to show you what the superimposed image of George Powell looks like in the doorway compared to these. So, all right, here we go. Okay, so here we go, right? These are those little 7s that we were seeing, right? In that representation picture from Knox, right? So here these are little 7s just for 7-Eleven. It's just little whatever 7-Eleven stickers or whatever they put on the door and stuff. And how useful this has turned out that they have that there. I wonder if they put these there just specifically to help them analyze their video. But here they are on the door, so that whenever these doors slide open or whatever, they know what these heights are exactly in the video, right? So I'm number one, because of that, am having difficulty understanding how this was so difficult to figure out in the first place. But there we are, right? Now, I'm going to point out that in that drawing that was made by Knox, he has the perpetrator's head being somewhere up around here, which I find was odd, right? Because what you're about to see right now, what I'm about to show you right now, is when they start to overlay George Powell and the actual perpetrator in the video, that perpetrator's head comes out to here and just barely reaches the top of these middle 7s, So anyway, just wanted to give everybody, I want to show everybody this so you get a good visual representation of these 7s on the door and how obvious this should have been to everybody right from the start. And like I said, it shows that this is very likely another situation like with Stephen Avery, where he was just an undesirable and they wanted to get him out of the way, for whatever reason. And instead of wanting to do their job correctly and get the actual guy, they just figured, whatever, we'll just pin it on this guy. That'll work. That's really what it looks like. And the fact is, they're still fighting this. And okay, folks, so here we go. We get to see what it looks like with the overlay. So here you're seeing the face of George Powell. Here you are seeing the face of the perpetrator when he was walking into the gas station store, basically, or no, the 7-Eleven, sorry. So you see his face as he's walking in. He's walking completely upright. Can't dispute that. So he's definitely not bending. He's not doing anything like that. He's standing straight up, walking straight, walking tall, as you would say, right? And this is where the top of his head reaches, right? Okay, and then here's George, all right? He's about an inch over that top 7. You know what I mean? This should have been a slam dunk. Shouldn't have needed any forensic experts for this, in my opinion. That some common sense would have solved this. And this is why this is another problem we have with the criminal justice system right now, is that common sense doesn't seem to have a place in it. And that's a scary, scary prospect. But here it is. Common sense really should have solved this to begin with. 7-Eleven had markers on the door that you could easily go measure. And, so there's really no real excuse for this wrongful conviction. And the fact is that he's still in. Now, there is good news, according to the article I just found after I got done watching this episode of Exhibit A, was that he's been awarded a new trial. And you would think it would be on this evidence here, but actually it seems to be more about some other evidence about a jailhouse informant who lied about their motivation to testify against him. So we'll go ahead and show you part of that article now. And by the way, links to that article will be left in the information down below the video for those of you who want to go check it out. So we'll move on to that now. But I just wanted everybody to see that, right? I mean, right? Common sense, right? Am I right? Come on, give me a hell yes over in the chat.
Hell yes.
Should have been really, really obvious, right?
Hell yes.
You know what I mean? All right, here we go.
Hell yes.
Into the article. All right, so you see, this is the type of stuff that happens when you have lazy cops, right? Lazy cops that don't want to have to chase down the actual suspect, and so they will sometimes find an easy scapegoat nearby and then pin it on them. And that way it's, when there's a conviction, it has the illusion of seeming final and seeming done with and over. It has that illusion at times. But when the conviction is gotten dishonestly, well, you're going to find out in the coming years that that's going to get noticed. There's a growing number of people out there that are taking an interest in it. So, you may not be able to fly this stuff under the radar as well in the future, moving forward. Something I would suggest to the criminal justice system, law enforcement, and everybody moving forward, you know. We the people don't want, you know, the people who are supposed to help maintain order running roughshod whenever they feel like they don't want to have to do their job because they don't want to have to chase down the actual bad guy. Let's just plug this guy in. Because that's clearly what's happening here. There's plenty of evidence to suggest that he's not the guy. He's way too tall. I mean, that alone should have done it. That alone should have told the policeman, oh, whoa, yeah, no, this isn't the guy. This is the wrong guy. We got the wrong guy, guys. But no, they didn't want that. They viewed him as undesirable, and so they just plowed forward. Bad move. Bad move. All right? And then you bring in this guy, Knox, who brings in his junk science to help you try to say it is whatever, you know, by getting him to say that the person in the video is 6'1". That's BS. That's BS, total BS. And so it's like those people, it's like that one lawyer, you know, George Powell's lawyer is saying in that one clip I played, where he's like, who knows about whether it's junk science? Nobody knows enough to question an expert in their field. The judge doesn't know. Usually the lawyers in the courtroom don't know enough. They don't know enough about that specific science to be able to specifically point out where they've made missteps and why the science is flawed. They're not equipped to do that. So and he says, you know, so the judge oftentimes thinks if it just sounds good, then he'll say, okay, yeah, let it in. So part of the problem we also have to face here is getting our criminal justice system to be better informed. That's why things like Dean Strang and Jerry Buting are doing over in Wisconsin with their organization, CIFS, Center for the Integrity of Forensic Sciences, where we'll be able to better inform our courts in the future and be able to throw out a lot of this junk science that seems to get used. But these are all things we have to do moving forward, and we have to take an interest, folks. It's our responsibility too. It's not fair to just sit there and rail at law enforcement and everybody else. It's up to us to be involved too, because we voted these people in, or, you know, for DAs and stuff like that. Often they're voted in, you know, and that sort of stuff. Chiefs of police are voted in. So we have to accept a certain amount of responsibility on ourselves, you know, as well. It's up to us to build the world we want. And the question is what we're seeing in our criminal justice system right now, are we happy with that? If not, we need to do something about it. And the criminal justice system is not inclined to want to change, because they feel their job is hard enough already. So they're not inclined to want to go shaking things up and changing things. But It's going to take the people getting involved in using their power to vote and you know, various other things to help bring our system more into the modern age. That's what's necessary. So what we're going to move into now is an article about George Powell and about his case. It's basically going to be letting us know that he has been awarded a new trial by the appeals court. So he's going to have a brand new trial. That means he gets to re-argue his entire case again. This time they're going to be able to add in their forensics about the video footage, and they're going to be able to show how much taller George is than the actual suspect. So I feel good for George. I feel good that he's very soon going to be seeing the light of day. And when he does, he's going to start putting out. He's been in jail, and he's been writing. He's got pages and pages and pages. And first thing he's going to do when he gets out, he's going to head to a studio. And trust me, after Netflix doing this show about him, he's probably going to have a number of people lining up to pay for his studio time. You know, sending professional musicians over to maybe even to help him and be on the tracks with him or that sort of thing. I mean, I'm sure after this documentary, when he finally, you know, wins his case in his retrial, he's probably going to find that he's going to have all the studio time that he wants. So, and more power to him. You know, he had to spend 12 years in jail for a crime he didn't do. It's pretty obvious he didn't do, because he's clearly not the guy in the video, because he's just too big. Dude's huge, man. He's totally huge. So, all right, we're going to move into the article. And then okay, so here's a little bit of an update for you, folks, of what's happening in his case. So, appeals court grants George Powell a new trial. Innocence Project hopes to clear the robbery conviction. So there's George there. George Powell, convicted in 2008 of a Killeen aggravated robbery, will be brought back to Bell County for a new trial after the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals ruled Wednesday that he gets a second chance to prove his innocence. Powell was sentenced to 28 years in prison after his conviction for the robbery of a Killeen 7-Eleven. He has now served about 12 years of that sentence. The appeals court said Powell was denied due process when the Bell County District Attorney's Office failed to disclose impeachment information about a jailhouse informant to the defense, presented false testimony from the same witness, and failed to correct that false testimony, the ruling said. So basically what it comes down to is he's getting a new trial because a due process violation. Because the district attorney's office, number one, failed to disclose impeachment information, right? And you're going to find out what that is coming up in a minute here, I think. Pretty sure. And that information wasn't passed to the defense. That witness ended up giving false testimony, and then they failed to correct that false testimony. So because of these reasons, he, you know, has been granted a new trial. So, okay. It was stated in the ruling with Demetric Smith, a jailhouse informant, impeached himself by testifying in exchange for favorable treatment in his own criminal case. So there was a carrot for him if he testified, see? Smith said in his testimony he had no deal with Bell County for his testimony and was only testifying because he wanted to do the right thing. Okay, so that would be a lie. That testimony was found during a habeas corpus hearing to be false, and the district attorney's office never corrected Smith's false testimony. Documentary to air, that's the one that I just watched and caused me to look up this article. A Netflix originals documentary series, Exhibit A, premieres Friday with a focus on Powell's case. The series focuses on how flawed or misapplied science can lead to wrongful convictions. The Innocence Project of Texas hopes the documentary will point out just how innocent Powell is, and that the actual robber is a different person who didn't even look like Powell, who is about 9 inches taller, than the robber is reported to be. The store's digital recording shows the clear difference. In the Innocence Project of Texas executive director Michael Ware said he saw the handling of the Powell case as prosecutorial misconduct. I have to agree. I mean, they're ignoring the obvious logic. I'm sorry, but that's what happened. They ignored obvious freaking logic. So I got to agree on that. In addition to filing a motion for reconsideration of the actual innocence claims, Ware will ask for the state to sanction the Bell County District Attorney's Office for the unconscionable behavior of Bell County prosecutors. Ware said that that office didn't want truth or justice. It only wanted a conviction and don't want to set right the wrong that they did. Yeah, I have to agree. Because here he is 12 years later, still in, and even though it's clearly not him in the video. Bell County prosecutors didn't disclose evidence to his trial lawyers that might have resulted in Powell's acquittal, the court said. In accordance with the decision, the case against Powell has been remanded for a new trial. District Attorney Henry Garza said in an email response to Telegram questions about the case. Accordingly, George Powell will be returned to Bell County and we will proceed to try the case again. See? They're all in for a penny, in for a pound. You see what I mean? This is why we need conviction integrity units, folks. These guys are bigger criminals than the people that they're trying to convict. And sometimes they are. Certainly here. It's unconscionable. That was a really good word for it. It's unconscionable that they would have this attitude with all the evidence that's, pointing to somebody that it wasn't George Powell. This is just this reminds me of Kim Worth and Devontae Sanford again. I mean, it's just, oh my Lord. This is why we need conviction integrity units working in our DA's offices and rooting things like this out, because obviously the DAs themselves are going to want to cover their butt. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is, folks. It's the writing on the wall. I've read the opinion and do not find the words mentioned by Michael Ware within the opinion. Neither do I believe that the process that occurred in George Powell's original trial to be consistent with that characterization, Garza said. We are prepared to confront whatever allegations are made by Mr. Ware. Yeah, good for you. Let's see how that goes for you guys. I'm going to be following this trial with great relish. A second trial, a new trial date attorney. The judge will be addressed when Powell returns to Bell County, Garza said. Previously, prosecuting Powell were Paul McWilliams and Leslie McWilliams. The trial judge was former 27th District Court Judge Joe Carroll. Bell County defense attorneys Michael Magana and Bobby Barina previously defended Powell, and both criticized the way the case was handled by the district attorney's office. Interesting. Bell County's 27th District Judge John Gaunt recommended that the Court of Appeals should grant Powell a second trial. Well, the judge seems to have a little different opinion than the prosecutors in this. So that's a positive sign. The recommendation came after numerous hearings in his courtroom that started in 2017 and continued until January 30th of 2018. So he was granting evidentiary hearings. I like John Gaunt. Certainly a breath of fresh air compared to Judge Sukowitz. Anyway, presenting the prosecution during the hearings was Assistant District Attorney Sean Proctor. Gaunt eventually issued a 109-page finding in February. The original judgment in the 27th District Court of Bell County was set aside, and Powell, who is imprisoned in Gatesville, will soon be placed back into Bell County Sheriff's Department custody to answer the charges set out in the indictment. A bench warrant for his return will be issued within 10 days after the court's new ruling. The Innocence Project of Texas will ask for a reasonable bond to be set for Powell, can be released pending his final disposition of this case. While we will be thrilled when he is released, we will not stop fighting until we receive Powell's full exoneration. So it's, like I said, this case has a lot of stuff running through it that's just like, that's very similar with Stephen and Brendan and what happened in their cases. Powell's ex-wife said that Carl Ortiz, a Killeen police officer at the time, told her Crime Stoppers would pay her $1,000 if she helped to prove Powell was guilty. Yeah. See what I mean, folks? That's the kind of lazy police work I'm talking about. I mean, that's exactly the type of thing that I'm talking about. I think it's a big step in the right direction that the court has acknowledged the deception perpetrated against George. Absolutely. And his rights to a fair trial. Absolutely. I also thank the Innocence Project for continuing to fight to prove the obvious. He is innocent. There you go. Well said. Parsons thinks the trial should be moved to another county because he doesn't believe Powell can get a fair trial in Bell County, she said. Judging by the way that these DAs are acting, I think there may be something to that as well. I think that may be a valid concern, although I do like the current judge. I think he's likely to make sure it's absolutely fair and above board. So I don't know. I guess I'm kind of undecided on that, but that's what it comes down to, folks. These are the common themes that run through wrongful convictions. And I love that there's more and more of these shows popping up on Netflix that everybody can get to see, that everybody, gets access to, or most people do, and that more and more people are getting an education on what these things look like and what can be hopefully done to prevent them in the future. So that's what's going on with his case in the present. And so I will definitely be following what's going on with his retrial with great relish. So there we are, another very interesting case, where it shows the similar themes that run through wrongful convictions and the way that these things happen. Like I said before, things like the CIFS started by Dean Strang and Jerry Buting, those are the type of things moving forward we need to help the courts be more informed so that they can understand when they're seeing junk science, so they can notice it when it's coming into their courtroom. Because think about it, judges and lawyers, they aren't forensic experts, so how are they exactly supposed to find the flaws in an expert's analysis, right? It requires another expert to do that, right? But unfortunately, the defense, unlike the state, doesn't always have bottomless pockets to bring in expert after expert after expert to disprove everything, because the state has bottomless pockets. They can bring in all they want, right? So the defense isn't always in that position of having bottomless pockets, so they're more hard pressed to counter expert testimony. And this is some of the inequities in our justice system. I think there truly should be a limit set on what the state is allowed to spend and that sort of thing on experts and all that sort of stuff, because if the defendant can't meet that for himself to be able to bring in the experts to combat the state's experts, then he's at a disadvantage. So then and if that's the case, then the state should have to, whatever they're forking over for their experts, they should have to give an equal amount to the defense to bring in experts for themselves. Right? It's sad, but that's an inequity in our system, that the defense doesn't always have bottomless pockets like the state does. And so there certainly should be limits set on what the state can do, in my opinion. And here they've just, that district attorney's office is a mess. You saw it in that article. That's a mess. They're still gonna, claim that they got the right guy, even though he's 9 inches too tall, and they're going to still stand by it. This is what we're combating in our system, folks. There's cancerous people that we need to get voted out of power all over the United States that are allowing these things to happen and allowing these things to continue. And don't think that Paul Howard over in Georgia is going to be forgotten by me, because he won't. There's another corrupt DA. Absolutely a corrupt bastard. So yeah.
Language, Timothy.
Anyway, so that wraps it up for this one, folks. I thought this was very interesting. I can't wait to watch some more of these episodes of Exhibit A on Netflix. I encourage everybody to go out there and check it out themselves. I'll leave the link to the article that I was reading down below, and it's been a pleasure. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you.
Okay. First of all, The dude made reference there to Paul Howard. He's the attorney in the Scott Davis case, in case you're wondering. Of course, they're in Georgia. The parallels that the dude referred to with Steve could not be more profound. Allow me to share this with you. Get there in a minute. There we go. Taste of freedom, brief for local man who won new trial in armed robbery. George Powell's arrest photos posted on Bell County Jail website on April 13th, 2020. And this was actually over a year ago, so we haven't really done our job in keeping track of this case for whatever reason. Neither me nor the dude, but anyway, it's a Central Texas man released from prison after spending a decade behind bars for an armed robbery he insists he didn't commit, is back in jail after his bond was revoked. George Powell III, whose aggravated robbery conviction was overturned in the summer of 2019, was released in September 2019, pending a retrial. The attorneys still want to try and put him away. Powell, George, was sentenced to 28 years in prison in 2009 for an armed holdup in June 2008 at a 7-Eleven store in Killeen. Interesting, Killeen, Scottish origin, a robbery he insists he did not commit. In overturning the conviction in June 2019, the Court of Criminal Appeals ruled that prosecutors failed to disclose to Powell's attorney that a jailhouse informant who testified against Powell had been told his testimony, quote, would be taken into consideration in disposition of his own pending charges. The court ruled the informant's statement during the trial that he hadn't made a deal in exchange for his testimony, that Powell had confessed to the robbery, was false, and that the state failed to correct such testimony. The former cellmate recanted his testimony in 2016. Powell was required to wear an ankle monitor as a condition of his release in September of last year and ordered to stay with his wife in Huntsville, a city in Walker County, Texas. Online jail records from Walker County show a George Powell was charged in February 2020 with possession of a controlled substance and tampering with physical evidence. Records show a George Powell was arrested on March 28, 2020 and charged with driving while intoxicated. Those same records show that a George Powell was arrested on April 7, 2020 on a bond revocation. The address for the George Powell arrested in Walker County is listed in Huntsville. The date of births for the Powell in custody in Bell County and the Powell arrested in Walker County also match. KWTX has confirmed Powell is in custody in Bell County and is working to confirm if Powell is the same man listed in the Walker County jail records. That's it as far as that one. So, you know, the guy's out on bond and there are certain restrictions to that bond, but I can't help thinking he should never have been in that situation in the first place. Sure, driving intoxicated, yeah, fine. You know, that's something you shouldn't do, and he will have to face consequences for that. Possession of a controlled substance, you know, I think it depends in which part of America you live as to whether it's legalized or not. It's pretty arbitrary, isn't it? The rules there. But I can't help thinking, that, okay, so George Powell, he's let himself down, but he's ended up back in prison a second time. But of course, unlike Steve, he presumably is still waiting on this retrial of his original case. So anyway, we'll try and keep up to date with what's happening with George Powell. I'll say a rather striking similarity that both Powell and Steve rearrested, although in slightly different circumstances and for different reasons. Okay, I'm going to say cheerio. I've got a Zoom call tonight at 9 o'clock, which I will record and then set up as a premiere for Friday. So I look forward to seeing you all again then. Better get this dog off for another walk, and we'll see you soon. Bye for now.